Saturday night, July 11th, 2020, Atlanta police pulled up to what looked like a regular crash on I-285 South near Benjamin E. Mays Drive. When officers got closer, the car sitting against the left barrier told a different story with glass blown out and bullet damage all over it. The driver was already gone, and his name was Rudolph Johnson, the Bankhead rapper people knew as Lil Marlo. To the streets, that scene didn't feel random at all, yet the real question was who had been waiting for that ride. Before anybody could understand why Marlo ended up like that, the story had to slide back to another Atlanta legend on the same interstate. 4 years earlier, on September 21st, 2016, Carlos Rico Walker, better known as Shawty Low, was driving a 2016 Audi near the I-285 southbound ramp to Cascade Road. Two women were in the car with him, and investigators later said they had been asking him to slow down before everything went wrong. The Audi ran off the road, hit a tree, flipped, and Shawty Low was ejected before police pronounced him dead at the scene. That crash was ruled an accident with no foul play, but in Bankhead, it still felt like the city had lost a king. Shawty Low was not just a rapper to the kids coming up behind him, since he had already been a street figure before D4L made him famous. His group's 2005 song Laffy Taffy went #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, then turned him into proof that Bankhead could reach the whole country. Before that fame, people around Bowen Homes knew him for money, cars, women, and the kind of motion young hustlers studied closely. He called himself the King of Bankhead, which later fed the public rap feud with T.I., including records like Dun Dun and What Up, What's Happening. To young Rudolph Johnson, Shawty Low looked like someone who had turned the same hard blocks into status, power, and a way out. That image mattered deeply since Rudolph was coming from Bowen Homes, where being broke could make the street life look like the only open door. Shawty Low once explained that losing his grandmother at 17 pushed him toward the streets, which made his story feel familiar to kids watching him move. He was facing heavy prison time when Laffy Taffy was climbing the charts, so his whole rise carried that wild mix of danger and escape. Marlo later spoke about him with real grief, saying his hood cried over Shawty Low while wishing Low had lived to see him make his own run. That connection is important, since Marlo was not copying a celebrity from far away, he was following a blueprint from his own soil. Bowen Homes itself had been sitting on Atlanta's northwest side since 1964, with 650 low-income housing units packed into Bankhead's roughest reputation. The project carried regular family life, street politics, corner pressure, and the kind of poverty that made every small win feel bigger than it was. In 1980, an industrial boiler exploded there, killing 2 maintenance workers and injuring dozens, which became another scar in a place already dealing with neglect. By the mid-2000s, one 6-month survey recorded 168 violent crimes inside the complex, giving police another reason to treat it like a danger zone. Still, out of that same pressure came names like Shawty Low and Parlay, proving the projects could produce stars while still burying people early. By 2009, Atlanta finally demolished Bowen Homes, making it the last of the city's old traditional public housing projects to come down. On paper, tearing it down was supposed to clear out the conditions that made the area so hot, but the streets didn't disappear with the buildings. People who grew up together got pushed into new neighborhoods, new apartment complexes, and new corners where old loyalties had to survive fresh pressure. That scattering helped move Bankhead energy into places like Adamsville and the Ninth Ward, where Marlo would later build his own name. So when his story keeps returning to I-285, Bowen Homes, Shawty Low, and Bankhead, it is not by accident, since the road out was always tied to the place that built him. After Bowen Homes came down in 2009, young Rudolph Johnson did not suddenly step into a cleaner life, since the same street rules followed him across Atlanta. The buildings were gone, but the names, grudges, habits, hustlers, and young dudes looking for rank kept moving through Bankhead. Around that period, people started knowing him less as Rudolph and more as Young Rude, a name that already carried his rough edge. That nickname later shifted into Lil Marlo, with street lore saying the name came from an older hustler tied to Shawty Lowe's circle. Whether every detail of that story was clean or not, the meaning was clear, since Marlo was becoming somebody people watched. That movement took him toward Adamsville and the Ninth Ward, where the street map had its own order before rap made everything public. The Goodfellas mob already had weight there, while 21 Slaughter Gang also carried influence around that same world. Marlo learned under older figures first, which gave him a close look at structure, discipline, intimidation, and how power moved through neighborhoods. After that, he broke off with younger guys to build Play for Keeps, better known as PFK, with other names like 3L and Per Gang floating around it. The crew borrowed a mafia-style setup with soldiers, capos, and Marlo standing at the top as the Ninth Ward God. That title mattered on the block, since it made Marlo more than a rapper before he even took music seriously. People talked about him as the one who could organize younger members, settle street issues, move money, and keep different corners locked in. PFK's image grew from Bowen Homes, Adamsville, and the Ninth Ward pressure, so it carried neighborhood pride mixed with real fear. The crew also sat near older groups like the Goodfellas mob, which meant friendship and tension could switch fast depending on money, loyalty, or disrespect. That kind of setup made every handshake risky, since today's homeboy could become tomorrow's problem. Across the city, another side of Atlanta was building its own reputation through Glenwood Road, Paradise East, and Slaughter Gang. Shaya bin Abraham Joseph, known worldwide as 21 Savage, came up around that East Side world before the records, awards, and fame changed his public image. His early circle was called Slaughter Gang, also known as 4L, while street reporting often connected that side to PDE, meaning Paradise East. Young Nudie, 21 Savage's cousin, came from that PDE world too, later facing his own legal problems tied to gang allegations. Baby Drill would also become linked to PDE and 4L in later cases, which kept that side under attention. 21. Savage's story was not clean either, since violence shaped him long before the industry learned his name. He had school trouble, got placed on probation for gun possession, bounced through alternative programs, then dropped out as the streets pulled harder. He lost his brother, Quantivirus, Tie Man, lost close friends, sold drugs, got involved in robberies, and survived being shot 6 times on his 21st birthday. That shooting killed his best friend Johnny, which pushed him toward rap as a way to carry everything he had seen. So when people later talked about PFK and 4L colliding, it was not just music beef, it was 2 Atlanta survival stories crashing. The strange part was that both sides had come from pressure, poverty, funerals, arrests, and neighborhoods where reputation worked like currency. Marlo's side came through Bankhead, Bowen Homes, Adamsville, Goodfellas mob, and the Ninth Ward chain of command. 21 Savage's side came through Glenwood Road, Slaughter Gang, PDE, Young Nudie, Baby Drill, and East Side politics that stayed active behind the fame. As both names got bigger, the crews around them did not suddenly become harmless background characters for music videos. They were still real people moving through the real blocks, with old arguments following them into studios, clubs, and social media. Then, Sa Bobby's Pull Up With Ah Stick added another layer to the Ninth Ward's pressure in 2017. The video featured Sa Bobby, Loso Loaded, Sierra Ridge Apartments, crowds of young people, and visible firearms that made the clip spread fast online. The song blew up without a major label push at first, pulling millions of views and streams while putting that neighborhood on a wider screen. Street Rumor later claimed the video helped bring heat that shut down a whole complex and got people arrested. That claim was never proven through a clear public case file, but law enforcement pressure around violent Atlanta housing areas was already rising. So by the time Marlo's name started traveling beyond Bankhead, the streets around him were already shifting under police attention. Bowen Homes had been demolished, Ninth Ward crews were being watched harder, and viral rap moments were turning local blocks into national evidence boards. Good Fellas Mob, 21 Slaughter Gang, PFK, PDE, 4L, Young Nudie, Baby Drill, Sa Baba, and Loso Loaded all belonged to that bigger Atlanta puzzle. Marlo stood near the middle of it, carrying the Ninth Ward Guard image while different crews kept reshuffling around him. That map is what made his later rise dangerous, since the same streets that gave him rank also kept a target nearby. Before Marlo's music career fully opened up, another Atlanta shooting had already placed his name in dangerous conversations. On March 4th, 2016, Bankroll Fresh, whose real name was Trentavious White, was at Street Exec's studio on DeFore Place. That studio was not some random room, since it was tied to Atlanta's rap scene through Street Execs, 2 Chainz, artists, managers, and street faces. No Plug, whose real name is Mendez Owens, also came through that night, reportedly to pass out CDs and collect 2 phones. The 2 men had a history going back to childhood, but their friendship had already turned sour after tension in the Ninth Ward. Inside the studio, the first problem started as a fight, not a gun battle, which makes the later chaos even heavier. Bankroll Fresh and No Plug got into it, while surveillance later showed the 2 being separated by a mutual friend named C-Note. No Plug left the building, but he came back for the phones, which brought the issue outside, where everybody was already on edge. According to the documented version, Bankroll came outside with an SKS-style rifle with about 10 to 15 armed people around him. Once Bankroll fired toward the vehicle, No Plug was in. Return fire came back, and the whole studio scene turned into a war zone. When the smoke cleared, police recovered more than 50 shell casings from the scene, while Bankroll Fresh had been hit in the hip. His own people carried him into a vehicle, then rushed him to Hughes Spalding Hospital, where he died before midnight at 28. No Plug never denied being present, but he always framed the shooting as self-defense after Bankroll allegedly fired first. Prosecutors never charged him. Then Atlanta police officially closed the case in June 2018 as a justified self-defense shooting. On paper, that was the official ending, but Atlanta streets rarely let paperwork control the whole story. The street version went in a different direction, and that version is where Marlo's legend started getting thicker. Rumors began saying Marlo was the real force behind Bankroll Fresh's death, even though no court record ever confirmed that claim. One story pointed to an alleged club clip involving 21 Savage, No Plug, and Marlo, with people online claiming they laughed about the killing. Another version pushed a different name completely, saying a Ninth Ward figure called Little Blue from Rude Unit was involved. None of those stories was proven, but they gave Marlo a bigger shadow than his music had created at that time. That was how Atlanta gossip worked around him, since one official case could produce 5 street explanations by the next week. The Bankroll Fresh shooting was already messy, then Marlo's name entering the chatter made him look like somebody moving behind curtains. Around that same period, street reporting also claimed he had robbed a plug named Hood Rich Pablo more than once. That claim was never tested in court either, but it matched the pattern people kept attaching to him. In the clubs, online threads, and neighborhoods, Marlo was becoming the kind of name people mentioned carefully. Then the rap door opened through Rashad Hosley, better known as Big Bank, the duct tape entertainment boss from East Atlanta and Zone 6. Big Bank had been telling Marlo for years that he needed to rap, but Marlo kept brushing it off like studio life was not for him. One day, Big Bank told him they had business in East Atlanta, then drove him to a studio instead. Once they got inside, Big Bank made him pick a beat, pushed him toward the booth, then forced the moment to happen. Marlo's first verse surprised him enough that he called Dominique Jones, better known as Lil Baby, the one person who would understand. That call mattered since Lil Baby was not just another rapper around quality control, he was Marlo's closest friend. Baby came from Oakland City, while Marlo carried Bankhead, Bowen Homes, Adamsville, the Ninth Ward, and PFK on his back. They moved like hood superstars before either one had fully broken through, with chains, cars, block respect, and a real bond between them. Lil Baby was building 4PF, meaning 4 pockets full, while Marlo's PFK identity still followed him into every room. Whenever people saw them together, it looked like 2 different Atlanta roads were meeting at the same studio door. Quality Control had already been watching Lil Baby before Marlo took rap seriously, with Coach K pushing Baby toward music around 2015. Baby listened faster than Marlo did, then worked around Young Thug and Gunna until he became a real QC presence by early 2016. Marlo stayed different since he still had one foot in the streets while the other foot slowly tested the booth. That split became clearer when Young Thug sat him down and warned him that he could not live both lives forever. Thug saw the talent, but he also saw where Marlo's street reputation could drag him. Lil Baby eventually helped push Pierre, P. Thomas, and Coach K to bring Marlo into Quality Control. By 2017, Marlo formally joined the label alongside a roster connected to Migos, Lil Yachty, and Baby himself. His first major introduction came through Second the Hard Way with Lil Baby, which gave listeners that rough Bankhead voice beside Baby's cleaner, melodic style. After that, Marlo released The Wire, then Ninth Ward God, a title that tied the music directly back to the blocks that shaped him. The name was not chosen for mystery, since everybody around Atlanta already knew what neighborhood image he was carrying. By 2018, Marlo dropped The Real One, bringing in names like Lil Yachty, Quavo, YFN Lucci, and Gunna. The features showed he was not just a local street rapper anymore, since the QC machine had placed him near major Atlanta power. In 2019, he moved closer to club records with Soakin' Wet, which featured Offset and City Girls over production from Hit Maka and OG Parker. Then, in February 2020, he released First and Third with songs that still carried loyalty, paranoia, hustling, betrayal, and family pressure. The music was moving, the label was behind him, but the same old blood kept standing near the studio entrance. By the time Marlo got comfortable inside Quality Control, the money around him started changing the way people viewed PFK. The label checks, studio access, features, cars, jewelry, and Lil Baby connection gave him more motion than most neighborhood bosses ever touched. Street accounts said he was not just feeding himself with that success, since PFK members allegedly received help through legal fees, loyalty money, and street backing. That made his name heavier around Bankhead, Adamsville, and the Ninth Ward, while also making every old issue more expensive to settle. What had once looked like a respected local crew soon carried a colder reputation, with stories about robberies, bounties, suppliers getting crossed, and payback moving fast. That shift made Marlo different from rappers who only carried old stories into their lyrics, since people claimed his crew was still active outside the booth. Around 2015, PFK was described in some street circles as organized, respected, and less reckless than other crews nearby. By 2020, that image had hardened into something more feared, with blogs and local talk painting them as cutthroat. The accusations were not clean court facts, but they shaped how people moved whenever PFK's names came up. In Atlanta, street politics, reputation alone could bring heat, especially when rappers, plugs, cliques, and neighborhood soldiers shared the same rooms. The alliance web around Marlo was messy, so you have to slow it down before the story turns back toward I Do 85. PFK was linked in street reporting to henchman 5L, a circle tied in fan sourcing to OMB Peasy's people, with loose talk around Playboy Carti connections. That same henchman 5L's side had reported tension with Homicide DTE, a Zone 6 group tied to the duct tape entertainment worlds. That detail loops back to Big Bank, since duct tape was the same East Atlanta orbit that first pushed Marlo into a studio. So even his music doorway was sitting near crews that later showed up in the same violent Atlanta map. PFK also clicked up with YFN, the crew connected to Rayshawn Bennett, better known as YFN Lucci. That tie mattered since YFN had its own serious beef with Young Thug's YSL, which was already one of Atlanta's most watched street and rap conflicts. The YSL and YFN war was tied to the 2015 murder of Donovan Peanut Thomas, then later became part of a huge Fulton County RICO picture. Young Thug had already warned Marlo that he could not live two lives forever, yet Marlo's alliances kept pulling him near people already under pressure. That made the warning feel less like advice from a superstar, more like somebody seeing the trap before it closed. YFN Lucci's later case showed how close rap fame, gang claims, and courtrooms had become in Fulton County. In April 2021, Lucci and 11 others were indicted on RICO and gang charges tied to alleged blood activity. He was also charged in connection with a December 2020 shooting that killed James Adams, though prosecutors did not accuse him of firing the fatal shot. By January 2024, prosecutors dropped most counts. Then Lucci pleaded guilty to one gang-related charge before receiving a 20-year sentence. His case was not connected to Marlo's murder, but it showed the same world Marlo had been moving through. Now the most dangerous rumor around Marlo came from the east side, where 4L, Slaughter Gang, and PDE sat near 21 Savage's orbit. By the late 2010s, street accounts claimed PFK's old ties with that side had soured into open hostility. Fan documentaries, TikTok pages, message boards, and hip-hop blogs kept repeating that PFK and 4L were at war. None of that placed 21 Savage in Marlo's murder through any police report, indictment, or public law enforcement statement. Still, the streets kept talking, which meant the rumor became part of the pressure whether prosecutors touched it or not. The alleged hit list is where the story gets even more sensitive, so the line between fact and street talk has to stay clear. From 2018 to 2019, multiple East Side figures connected in rumors to PDE or Slaughter Gang were said to be targeted. One name that kept coming up was Diesel Slaughter, described in the research as a 4L or PDE affiliate killed outside a recording studio in 2019. Blogs claim Marlo's PFK crew orchestrated that shooting as revenge for earlier attacks tied to Bowen Homes. Another rumor involved a Baby Drill, a young PDE and 4L rapper later arrested in 2023 on murder charges from a 2022 homicide. Those claims were never proven against Marlo in court, yet they became the backbone of the title people kept putting on his death. Internet commentators said PFK had been pressing 21 Savage affiliates, while Slaughter Gang could not let that slide without sending a message. By early 2020, whispers in clubs claimed Marlo had a hit list, with gossip pages saying PFK members bragged about clearing out the East. The same rumor mill claimed 4L affiliates placed a $50,000 bounty on Marlo's head. Other posts alleged he mocked the threat by riding through East Side neighborhoods, flashing money near Glenwood Road, and moving as if nobody could touch him. Not every theory pointed toward 4L, which made the case even harder to read from the outside. Some people claimed the real issue was internal betrayal, with PFK members angry over money, bail, loyalty, or promises that were not kept. Another version said Marlo owed an out-of-town supplier, while a more extreme rumor dragged in a cartel-connected drug debt. A smaller theory framed it as a robbery, but police treated the shooting as targeted from the start. That mattered since nothing was publicly reported stolen, while the amount of gunfire made the scene look planned. On July 11, 2020, it arrived like a regular Bankhead day before everything folded back into the intro. Marlo had reportedly been in the studio that morning with QC artists Lil Yachty and Bankroll Freddie, keeping music close even while danger circled. Later that day, he attended Bankhead Day, also called Bowen Homes Day, where old residents gathered for food, cars, memories, and neighborhood love. People said he hugged friends, took pictures, gave money to vendors, and moved around like somebody still connected to the place that raised him. That detail makes the night colder, since he had spent the day honoring Bankhead, before dying on a road outside it. Around 11 p.m., Marlo left the event in a black Mercedes-Benz, with one version saying he was going to pick up his young daughter. Another street claim said a call came in telling him to drive south on I-285, which became one of the biggest mystery pieces afterward. Around 11:30 p.m., Atlanta police were sent to what first looked like a single car crash near Benjamin E. Mays Drive. When officers reached the vehicle, the crash story fell apart since the driver had been shot while traveling southbound. The car had drifted into the barrier, leaving Rudolph Johnson, Lil Marlo, dead inside at 30 years old. That was the scene from the opening, only now the road had names attached to it, from PFK and 4L to YFN, YSL, PDE, and QC. Reports repeated for years said the Mercedes was hit with more than 100 rounds, though Atlanta police never publicly confirmed that exact bullet count. What they did say was that Marlo appeared to be the intended target, which cut down any idea of a random highway accident. Lil Yachty posted that he had recorded with him hours earlier, while Lil Baby stayed mostly quiet as the streets waited for a reaction. By sunrise, Bankhead had lost its Ninth Ward god, and Atlanta had another murder everybody discussed, while nobody could prove who pulled the trigger. By Sunday morning, the news had already moved from I-285 into every Atlanta timeline, with Lil Yachty posting that he had recorded with Marlo hours before the killing. Lil Baby kept his grief quieter, while Quality Control, Bankhead, Bowen Homes people, PFK members, fans, and family started mourning a man they called the Ninth Ward God. Candles went up, old pictures started circulating, and Marlo's name became part memorial, part warning, part rumor machine. Gossip pages pushed 4L retaliation, internal betrayal, drug debt, cartel links, federal monitoring, and social media tracking as possible explanations. None of those theories came from an official charge, but each one kept the streets talking like somebody knew more than police were saying. Atlanta police treated the killing as targeted from the start, which made the silence around the case even louder. The Fulton County medical examiner confirmed the victim as Rudolph Johnson, but the public never got a named shooter, confirmed motive, or suspect vehicle. Investigators said he was the intended target, yet no arrest followed, no indictment came, and no courtroom ever tested the stories moving through Atlanta. That gap left PFK, 4L, PDE, 4PF, and other names floating around fan documentaries without a clean legal answer. The case became one of those murders where the streets had too many versions, while the official file had no public ending. After Marlo died, Atlanta law enforcement started squeezing rapper-linked crews harder, and Operation Heatwave became one major example. In 2022, Captain Ralph Woolfolk identified one arrested suspect as a confirmed PFK member while explaining how gangs use convenience stores and gas stations as strongholds. Police focused on guns, narcotics, stolen vehicles, and repeat offenders, and then reported homicides dropped 29% during the operation period. That crackdown did not solve Marlo's murder, but it showed how PFK had moved from street rumor into police language. The wider city was entering a RICO era where rap crews, neighborhood cliques, lyrics, Instagram posts, and shootings all started landing in court files. That same pressure hit names connected to Marlo's wider world, even when their cases were not directly tied to his death. Fulton County DA Fonnie Willis brought the YSL case against Young Thug, Gunna, and others, while YFN Lucci dealt with his own gang-related case. Young Nudy's PDE circle also faced indictment, which kept 21 Savage's Eastside orbit under public attention. Then, Paper Gang Family showed another version of the same pattern, with federal prosecutors describing an apparent rap label as a drug network. All of that made Marlo's story feel less isolated, since Atlanta's music scene kept colliding with gang investigations after he was gone. 5 years later, the hardest voice in the story was not a rapper, blogger, detective, or rival speaking from the sidelines. It was Rudolph Johnson III, Marlo's father, still telling reporters that his family had no closure after losing his firstborn son. By 2025, Marlo's 3 children were growing up with their father's name trapped between tribute posts, street gossip, police silence, and old beef theories. His father said he would keep making noise until the case was solved, which turned grief into the only pressure left. Atlanta knows the names, the streets know the whispers, but the case file still has no public name attached to the trigger.